4 wins brewing. All right, let's bring him in. Our goalie guru, as he keeps being called on social media, Kevin Woodley. Kevin, thanks for joining us today. How are you?
I'm a little offended. I'm being brought to you by something with a little more weight to it. I thought we were going to lay off the LBs that I'd gained in the last little while here. I don't know, Quads. It's going to cost you a few beers introducing me that way, buddy.
Who would you rather be sponsored by, Wendy's or them? Because Frank complains that he's always brought to you by Wendy's.
Yeah, no, I'm taking the beer company every time.
There you go. Okay, Kevin. Goaltending is obviously at the forefront of this series now. We were just talking about how Juuse Saros did not steal Game 2 from the Canucks. But before we get to goaltending, because obviously we're going to talk a lot about that, what did you make of the Canucks' performance in Game 2 and the potential adjustments that need to be made?
Well, it's interesting enough, he didn't have to steal Game 2, but there was a save he made early in that game on Pius Suter that might answer both our questions. Because I do think, just as you give Demko credit for the save he made on Beauvillier potentially being a game changer for Game 1, that one that Saros made on Suter was that was a hell of a save, especially because of all the bodies in front of him and the fact that he didn't see that puck go wide, didn't see it come off the boards. As a goaltender, when you lose it like that, one of the things you're looking for is where's everyone else going? And so you're trying to read off those cues. And Juuse told me after the game that he reacted purely based on what he saw Suter doing. And that's how he anticipated where that puck was going. And then just to have the explosiveness to get a pad there and get it across. And if you're Suter, you got it. Hey man, anything over 11 inches is in the net there. So, and I think that was a key play, because when we talk about adjustments and the way that Nashville and is fronting some of the traffic that Vancouver likes to create, because don't forget, Vancouver has been very effective at creating point shots with layered screens. It talks about levels. It's an effective way. It can be an effective way to create offense. And one of the counters, however, they're not dropping bombs back there, right? They're not setting up Filip Hronek for monster one-tees. It's more of a finesse pucks to the net from especially guys like Hughes that are so good at moving, creating lanes, and then finding lanes with his wrist shot. But guess what? They hurt. I'm not going to pretend it doesn't require a level of bravery to get in front of them, but you're not taking your life in your hands. You know what I mean? That's an easier shot to front as a defender than, like I said, Hronek dropping the hammer or PD dropping the hammer, off the flank on the power play. Think of all those shot blocks that Nashville had the other night. There was only one by McDonough that I recall, getting up slowly from and sort of, paying a price, taking a piece out of the defender with it. So because of the nature of that offense, it's easy to front on it. They've done an effective job of it. Now, one of the counters, I think, when Tocchet talked about there were some looks we had and some things we could do, one of them, I think, may have been that play like the one that Suter failed to convert, where if you go off net low and get a puck off the end boards, you can find layers behind that fronted defense and create those chances down low. And I know people are probably tearing their hair out. They missed the net how many times? And you're telling me you want them to miss it on purpose a few more? I'm not saying that's the only play, but I do think that might be one of the things that Tocchet was talking about that they can look for to sort of solve. And if so, you want to get into those boards in Smashville and see how that puck comes off it and make sure everybody's comfortable. Goalies always do it early in morning skates, see how the rims go, things like that. How's the puck going to play off the boards? If you're a defenseman of your forwards, you want to be testing that tomorrow morning at the morning skate to make sure you're comfortable with how it's going to come off, how it's going to react. Is it hot? Is it dead? Things like that. If it's a play, it's not like I expect them to do this a ton, but it's one you can look for every once in a while.
Besides that play off the end boards potentially that you mentioned, what other adjustment can the Canucks make to Nashville's approach? Because it isn't just that they block a ton of shots and are getting in these lanes. They seem to be pressuring the points a lot more aggressively than other teams did against Vancouver in the regular season.
Well, I mean, take a look at the goal that sort of that changed things. The Suter tip, in on the forecheck. Besser gets it up high really quick. And that was one of the few times where we did see that lane open. And that was because of the low-high transition there. So off the forecheck, back up the high. So working the puck low to high, but also not being able, it can't be the default. It can't always be dump it back in behind the net and then go back up to the point. indirect passes off the boards that allow Hughes to get into his wheelhouse faster as opposed to sort of having to wait for a pass. And then working it down low and attacking down low. We saw some near misses off that. You can attack Saros directly from above the goal line on sharp angles. He's not the largest goaltender. The temptation will be to go short side high, and certainly that's a play that can be there at times if you get it just above the goal line. But I think because of that, watching him in practice, there's a tendency to want to sort of get the head up and lean that up into the post. And what does that do? That exposes sort of just over the pads on the blocker side, on the far side, if you're tacking on the glove. And so if you can pull that back up just even to the bottom of the dot, you can look to exploit that. So I just like to see them attack the net more. And it matters, especially if you get other bodies there too, to sort of create secondary chances and even pucks that just go off. And there were a few, they just happen to go off and hit posts. But, clearly you can't live and die with soft, find the lane point shots if the Predators continue to be so effective at taking them away.
Okay, at the other end of the ice, Kevin, what did you think of Casey DeSmith in game 2?
I mean, you couldn't have scripted a worse start just in terms of the bounce, the timing. Early in a game, under that pressure, you're going to be a little, you're probably going to be a little more over aggressive. You're going to be a little, I don't say on edge because that implies that, you're nervous, but I just think you're more likely to be a little more active early in a game like that. And so the first shot, he reads backdoor tip, and so he wants to get there and he makes a push. And the one part that he talked about in the postgame that I didn't see in real time, and I'm not sure I saw it as a talking point elsewhere enough, frankly, was Casey's so good moving around on his knees, at times powerfully enough that it takes him out of plays, but he slides to his left. He's still going to get back and make that save on the right. And if you watch, he actually slips out, and his left skate, when he goes to make a push, he just loses an edge. I'm not sure if he caught a piece of soft ice. I'm not sure if he just, in a bit of a rush, didn't grab the edge fully, or even the fact he has somewhat new. I was a little surprised, actually, to be honest. Those pads, I didn't see them till like last week. So brand new pads, a little crispier, maybe a little less soft on the bottom, just prevents him from getting the edge he would normally get and make that save. So combination is sort of a little over aggressive on the first slide, and then uncharacteristically not being able to grab and load up a push edge and slipping out like that. Just like I said, you couldn't have scripted a worse start. Beyond that, I don't fault him on the Forsberg. Yeah, both guys go to the back door, so it's one-on-one with a 48-goal scorer. Maybe knowing that both guys have sort of backed off to take away the pass option, you'd like to stay on the short side a little more aggressively, force him to move it around you rather than giving up his forehand side. But that's picking nits, man. That's a pure goal scorer one-on-one. And then, the rebound off the rush is, this is going to be a factor and has been in Casey's game, even in the best games of the year. There's going to be some secondary chances. He does produce a lot of rebounds. I don't think they're all bad rebounds. I think he does a very nice job of keeping a lot of tough chances in front of him. But we talked about it as soon as the switch was made, the importance of making sure you're taking care of those second opportunities in front of him as a defense core.
How long of a leash would you have for DeSmith, not only in game 3, but through the rest of the series?
Oh, Harm, that's a tough one because I think it all depends on the circumstances, right? Like if he were to really be settled in for the first 2 periods and say there's a 5-minute stretch where things come unraveled early in the third, then the first 2 periods matter. Because the reality of throwing Arturs in there is this is all new to him too. So all those nerves and that extra energy that I just talked about Casey having, he's going to have that twofold because he's never done it before. He doesn't have the same experience. Not to say he can't. Not to say you might get some found money there if he reacts the right way. He certainly had big moments on big stages with Latvia in the World Championships. But ignoring Casey's experience, ignoring how new this would be to Arturs could also be a mistake as well. And so I expect it to be a long leash. Frankly, I think he earned the long leash in the Edmonton game. This is a different conversation, to be perfectly honest, if not for that Edmonton game. But I was really impressed with how he bounced back, how he played. But in talking to him afterwards, what he went through mentally to get to that spot and get that trust back in his game, it wasn't an easy process, but it spoke to a maturity and, like I said, an experience that the other guy just doesn't have at this point. I just shouldn't say maturity, but experience that Arturs doesn't have at this point.
the whole reason we're talking about any of this is Thatcher Demko's out with another injury that we suspect is a knee injury, Kevin. The video seems to suggest it happened in the final 48 seconds of game one. Can you tell us anything about the injury? Should fans at all be worried at this point about Thatcher Demko's knees or just his ability to stay healthy?
No, I understand those questions. I don't, like I said, a lot of the reporting's been done on how long it's going to be. I concur with not expecting to see him back. It's the same knee in a short period of time. Even though it is a different injury to the knee, like you're still talking about a joint that's been impacted a couple of times here in a couple of months. So I think in terms of should you be worried, if you're expecting him back soon, I think that might be premature. But long term, I don't know. I don't know it's tough. I don't know what the injury is exactly, so I can't say. There's nothing I've heard that leads me to believe this is like, oh man, like this could be it, or this could be like a devastating long-term injury. That's not what we're dealing with here. It's just the timing sucks. At least that's not my impression of what we're dealing with here. It's just the timing sucks, and it means he's not going to be available. I really doubt, given the back-to-back nature of these things, I can't see it, before the conference final, and that may even be a stretch. So, I get the long-term questions. I understand some of the, the questioning about how often he's been injured, but I really do look at a lot of these as the same injury, right? Like I know it's a different part of the knee, but the fact is he rushed back to be here, which he should, everybody was applauding him for and all the work he put in to get back. But I guess, even myself watching him fly around the rink and how good he looked and how good he said he felt and how he wasn't worried about the joint, worried about his knee. I felt like, these were all good things that he was able to do this and get back for the playoffs. But I guess anytime you return, ahead of schedule, the human body takes time to heal. And so there was always this risk. I was ignorant to it a little bit, like just saying, hey, he's back. Don't worry about it. You look at that save on Bavilla and you're like, he's 100%. Like, look at that. That's remarkable. But I guess if the joint doesn't fully heal, then there's always a risk. And we saw the effect of it. It's the same way I look at the injury last year. People are like, he was hurt 2 years ago and then he was hurt last year. Same injury. Not different injury, but not getting through the first one properly led to the second one directly. And I honestly don't believe that's all on him. I think there were some things missed in the recovery process, in terms of the mechanics of the way he was moving that were there, that weren't addressed, that could have been addressed, that ultimately led to the second injury. So people look at them as 4 different injuries over a course of 2 years, 3 years, I guess now, and say he's injury prone. I look at a guy who they played the wheels off of 2 years for Bruce Boudreau, led to a knee injury, led directly to a groin injury, see those intertwined, and see the same thing here with 2 knee injuries. And maybe you could make the argument, given how much they played him after the All-Star break, that contributed to the first one as well.
So, sorry, Harm, I have a question about this. I just want to follow up on it, Kevin. Is there anything the Canucks should be doing different aside from giving him more rest, but like, do they have to prioritize going to get a true 1B and managing his workload better in the season? Like, what's the answer here? Is there anything Thatcher can do differently? Is there anything the team should be doing differently? Like what's the road ahead here?
Well, I think Thatcher already did things differently after the last time, right? Like changed the way he works off ice. And I think he felt really good about those things. And we've seen other guys that have made those changes have, lots of success and not as many injuries. In terms of what they can do, it's not like it's really easy to point at it now and say, you only played 49 games, workload wasn't an issue. But what was the pace before the injury? What was the pace between the All-Star game and the injury? Were there some starts in there that you probably could have argued he didn't need to make? I'm not entirely sure. And I'm not being critical of the decisions that were made. I should actually be really careful with that. But I'm saying it's a fair question at this point, just because of what's happened. In terms of Thatcher, like, if there is a stone left to be turned over to figure this out, trust that he will. Could it be as simple as equipment? Not to blame it, but at a time when you're seeing a lot of lower body injuries, would I be moving? I literally had to cut off a call just a minute ago with the goaltender that I was doing an interview with and some pro reads and breakdowns with, an NHL goaltender that switched out of the same skate that Thatcher wears because there's no give in the product and all that energy And that's why goalies love it, because they move their foot and it transfers right to the ice. There's no give. Everything transfers directly. But that lack of give tends to move up the chain. And this goalie, for him, it was ankles, had ankle problems in that one-piece skate, moved out of it, isn't having them anymore. Other guys say their knees and hips don't hurt as much. I just think, given the nature of the injuries over the last couple of years, if that's a stone, he should maybe consider turning over and trying something with a little more give in it. Maybe your movements aren't quite as crisp, but it's not putting near as much demand on your lower body in particular. That'd be the one thing I think I'd look at.
Big picture, when you look at the series, how do you look at Vancouver's chances tied 1-1 without Demko? Like, what would you look at as the strongest case in favor of Vancouver right now, and maybe the strongest case in favor of Nashville outside of the goaltending?
Well, the strongest case in favor of Vancouver is how they played defensively, especially in game 2. Like, I know that they didn't create quality like we'd like to see, and they needed to do a few things differently, obviously, in terms of managing the way Nashville was defending and blocking shots, right? So you expect that adjustment, but they gave up nothing. As Rick Tocchet said, like 4 or 5 chances, he'll take that all playoffs long. And I think it's actually the same, that same answer is the flip side, Harm, because are they going to be able to do that? Are they going to be able to negate Nashville off the rush to that degree the rest of the way, right? Like we saw it early in the first game. And so I think you take game 2, as much as this will be hard for Canucks fans to hear. And yeah, there were some score effects in there for sure. But controlling play to that degree, you take it. The question to me is like in some ways, Casey wasn't, there's just a couple of moments, but he wasn't overly tested. He wasn't under barrage. Like the Nashville didn't generate. We heard about how incredible this team was in the second half of the season and all the offense they generated. We haven't seen that yet, outside of maybe some chances that nearly materialized or some rush chances that came close in the first period and a bit of the first game. And so if Nashville manages to start generating that, or if the Canucks open up in pursuit of offense and start giving that back on the counter, which would be really uncharacteristic of them. But if that were to happen, I'm not sure what this looks like, and can Casey hold up to that against a team that scored a ton of goals down the stretch? Same with the power play. Like, the PK made one mistake in the first game. Carson Soucy, me and him talked about it the next day for a PK story I was doing. He just got a little over aggressive at the line. It was a bit of a broken entry, and he thought he could break it up the line, and that left Tyler Myers sort of when he didn't, it left Myers a little exposed on a 2-1 down low. And my knee jerk was, oh, here we go. Like, we heard about this great power play, and now the first opportunity with it, a minute in, it's in the back of your net. Since then, they haven't got a sniff on the power play. So again, like, that's a good thing for Vancouver. The PK's been excellent, but if Nashville starts to move the puck around like they were in the second half of the season and solves that and forces, you need more out of your goaltending, is it there? So a lot of questions yet to be answered, Harman. I think a lot of the positives for the Vancouver Canucks, I sort of look at it both ways. Keep it up, great, even if you didn't win game 2. But what happens if you can't?
Kevin, good stuff as always, man. We'll be sure to check in with you again during the playoffs, because this story is not yet fully written. Okay, a little more weight to it, Harm. That would be me, but you could go easy on me on the introductions next time, boys. I expect the delivery of that delicious sounding beer to make up for that shot I know you were taking. Deal. You know what? That you got a deal, Kevin. You got a deal. Thanks for joining us, man. Appreciate it. Take care, guys. Canucks Conversation is live Monday through Friday, every weekday at 2 p.m. over on the Canucks Army YouTube channel. Make sure you like, subscribe, and interact in the YouTube live chat every day with us, folks.